Good day, students. Today we're going to be talking about your next lesson, which is writing from the trenches. We've been talking about a couple of things in World War One. We discussed the new technologies, from machine guns to airplanes to just a new type of warfare that World War One really brought in, especially known as trench warfare. And remember, trench warfare really started because both the Allies, including England and France, and then Germany and Russia, all dug along the eastern and western fronts. And they just dug in, they set up posts with machine guns, and they essentially tried to use old tactics against new technologies. There was also new artillery shells that could launch further. Gas warfare was a problem. So life in the trenches was really, really, really tough. Millions of people would eventually die in this, and it was just an adjustment. And you have to think, all right, what in my life am I possibly not adjusting to quick enough? Or is there something that's changing in the world that I'm just really resistant to and it's hurting me? Sometimes it's okay to hold back on new technologies or new changes, but other times it really hurts you. And World War I is a classic example of how it could be a negative thing. So today you're going to be writing as if you were living in the trenches of World War I. And this is going to be your lesson here. So I wanted to go over this today because the last time I had you guys write some letters, especially with imperialism in Africa, to Mr. Morrell, who was a British journalist, there was a couple general mistakes. One of the biggest mistakes I noticed was that everyone was... I'm sorry, I'm having some Chipotle today. One of the biggest mistakes people made was that they were very vague, and they would say things like, "Dear Mr. Morrell, we're getting treated really, really badly. They keep taking our food and making us work really hard." Well, you know, that's not necessarily untrue, but the problem is it could have been used to describe labor camps in the 40s, or it could have been used to describe factory work in the Industrial Revolution, or it could have been used to describe prison labor, or a whole host of other things. It wasn't specific to the time. And so when you're writing this letter today, it's from the trenches, and I give you a couple guidelines in this, make sure you're very specific. I said here that you want to provide a vivid image of what life was like in the trenches. Remember, your person has not experienced this, so you need to consider their perspective. You might want to talk about what life in the trenches was like. What types of sounds would they hear? What types of smells? What was it like if you heard the whistle and you had to climb up the ladder to run across no man's land? What were your chances? What were you thinking as you're going through no man's land? What types of things would you be facing from the enemy? And this would work both sides. You could write this letter, and the experience that a German or a French soldier had would be very, very similar. In fact, it would show that probably the combatants had a lot more in common than they actually disagreed on, and then when it came to life. So your letter should be at least 8 to 10 sentences long. Again, you want to be very, very specific. You want to mention things very specific to World War I. You want to mention your location, like you're along the Marne River, or you're in Bavaria. Geography helps. Use that lesson of geography that we talked about in World War I at the beginning to talk about the battles that you are at. I've also provided a couple of links here. For example, this link links to War Horse, that you may have seen that movie last year, I guess, and it was a scene from there about life in the trenches. But there's also a couple really great websites. The Great War PBS is a good one. Trenches on the Web is really good. Life in the Trenches. So I expect you to use some of these sources in here to help craft your letter, but make sure you're being very, very specific in that letter. Here you'll notice that this is a requirement of the rubric. Content is accurate, specific, and based on the information learned in the lessons and textbook. The response answers the prompt specifically and concisely, and it is clear the student understands the content lessons by the use of their specific examples and conclusions. Notice here that if you're really vague, if I can't really tell or it's unclear, as maybe you mentioned some specific places and some specific sides, but you're not really specific on what people would think. And then lastly, if you're just mentioning, like I said, a lot of people did with Africa, where they were saying, oh, it's really, really bad, and conditions are tough, and, friends are dying, and no, that's too vague. That could be applied for a summit to Mount Everest. So you need to be very, very specific to World War One. You might also want to include what people would be feeling like, and just something along how much the world's changing. I know a lot of people like watch sometimes Downton Abbey. There's a lot of World War One, and maybe you've seen that. But your key thing is you're writing to someone who doesn't know anything about life in the trenches. They don't know anything about it, and you need to come at it from that perspective. They don't know what it's like, and you're trying to communicate how they can care for you back home. So do your best with this. Again, 8 to 10 sentences. You're going to get 5 points for submitting it, and then, or if it's blank, you're not going to get anything. But if you're going to get 5 points for at least submitting it, and then I'll use this rubric to grade your content and your accuracy and your writing skills. So grammar counts as well on this, and so make sure you use spell check and you check for commas and periods and capitalization. And just do your best. Have fun with this. This is a different writing assignment, and usually students produce some great things. Make sure if you want to submit pictures with it along. Sometimes people would do that with letters, right? They would send pictures. So make sure if you want to include that, you can. Best of luck, and let me know if you have any questions. I'll be happy to meet with you.